Hello, everybody. My name is Amol Patel. You're watching the Smoking Hot Coffee Show, where every day, Monday through Friday, 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, we talk to founders and other people in the startup world. Today, I'm joined with...
Hey guys, I'm Jeff Pelton down here in San Diego.
And today we got Dan Mohler. He's been in the LA scene for quite a while, starting off with the weatherchannel.com and Fandango, and then moving to Launch and with realtor.com. I mean, this guy has been around the block since the mid-90s, and he knows what it takes to get big consumer internet companies, to get relationships with possible advertisers, has built sales teams from scratch. It was really great having him on today. Jeff, talk to us more about Dan. What'd you learn today?
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting, his story at Fandango and the way that they were initially a transaction platform, right? You're buying movie tickets, but then they realized, wow, we have an incredible audience here of moviegoers and whatnot. So they were able to capitalize on that, and I think that was his main effort there, was to grow that part of the business. So for me, what was very interesting is like a startup entrepreneur, or you're thinking about starting a business or business model, how your business model might work. It's really important to look at multiple revenue streams and the sorts of audience and engagement that you have on your web app or your website.
Yeah, absolutely. And without revenue, you're not going to make it. That's the bottom line. A lot of startups fail because they are not able to get enough money to keep going. They run out of money. And so advertising is definitely one of the best ways of doing that. Many internet startups, in fact, rely on advertising. And of course, and then obviously, if you can come up with a better, other sources of income, other revenue sources, and that's also another good thing. Dan talked a little bit about that with Fandango and how they kind of grew that. Jeff, what are your thoughts in terms of Dan's experience with with Launch and just his history and have done this for so many years?
Yeah, he's got an incredible experience. That's why it's a pleasure to have him on the show, just to talk about anything that he's willing to bestow upon us, because he's certainly got the experience in the trenches. The thing with the internet and the experience, as I see it, is that there's no rules. You make it up as you go.
Yep.
Everything's an open playing field. Creativity is at its best. You really are open to doing what you want and kind of creating your own industry or field or whatever it is. And so, when he started, I don't think he would have necessarily seen the end result as it evolved. I think the internet industry is just so open and ripe, and not, people don't know what's going to win yet. So we talk a little bit about that with digital media, how exciting it is. Mobile phones, smartphones are still sort of an untapped resource in a lot of ways for advertising and marketing. Tablets, and as well as video and some of the other mediums on the web that are continuing to evolve without a real solid backing, right? We talk about content creators on YouTube like ourselves who would love to be able to just flick a switch and start making some money for what we're doing, but it's not that easy yet.
Right. No, we definitely, I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, we talked about making money on YouTube. What does it take if you're a small team to possibly even leave YouTube and build your own ad team? And we talked a little bit some of the tactics. He shared with us a really cool thing back in the day with Fandango, how they were able to isolate American Express users and go to American Express directly and get a special deal.
It was Visa Select Card.
Oh, Visa. Okay. Yeah, and basically really learning who your users are, and then and figuring out what they're doing, and then possibly approaching a sponsor, an advertiser that would benefit from that very small piece of your very small slice of your user base. So there's a ton of stuff to learn, especially if you happen to be gunning for consumer internet, big companies, big large plays. You're going to learn a lot here from Dan. So with that, please subscribe to our show on YouTube and on iTunes. You can also email us at info@smokinghotcoffee.com. We love getting your emails. It makes our year. Definitely join our mail list. Go to our site. We just have been changing it and finally updating it. Jeff?
Yep, we've been doing a little bit of work to the website. We'd love if you guys would come check it out. Check out our subscribe list where we have all of our different channels that we publish to. If you guys would email us, info@smokinghotcoffee.com. Tell us how we're doing, what you'd like to hear, maybe guests that you would like us to have on, or topics that we should cover. Yeah. We'd love to hear from you guys.
Absolutely. All right, so with that, today we've got Dan Mohler on the show. How you doing today, Dan?
Doing great. How you guys doing?
Excellent.
Awesome. No, it's been really hot out here in LA. So it's today I had the air conditioner on, so I'm a little good right now. But you're an LA native. Tell us about your history here in LA, the companies you've been, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, not an LA native. Grew up in Virginia, but moved out here. Actually, danced across the country with the Weather Channel,
Okay.
and came out here actually in '88 with them, and was a part of the Weather Channel as they launched their website. I think it was in '95 that
Wow,
happened.
that is early days. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
we're
Well,
talking.
and
That's Netscape Mosaic. Are we?
yes, something like that. Yes.
Wow.
And what was great about the I mean the Weather Channel, I could dig into that deeper if you guys want to. It was a great startup in and of itself,
Right.
battling it out with
Yeah, yeah.
CNN.
No, no. I definitely
Yep.
want to talk about the whole cable television because right now I think with YouTube we're going through another renaissance of like independent video, channels and all that. In my opinion, so.
Yeah, absolutely. As I look across the landscape about things that are changing the most, I think it is video. Not only just the platform that the mobile device is bringing to the table, but how video is shot, how easy it is for people to be doing video. There was a story in the LA Times today about people who are trying to incubate television shows, 30-minute television shows,
Right.
for the chances of them getting picked up in a bigger way. So video is changing dramatically.
Great. No, we definitely want to cover that. All right. So
Yeah.
yeah. So you're at the Weather Channel.
Yep.
Tell us a little about how that .com. How'd that go?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was funny. I guess it was around '96. I stuck my head up from the Weather Channel and said, "Wow, there's a lot going on out here." The Weather Channel had launched their own website by then, and certainly in those days, with a lot of dial-up, the basic content and information that the Weather Channel was going to provide was going to certainly make sense, and the Weather Channel's done great. But I stuck my head up and I saw a company present, I think at a conference in UCLA. It was called Launch, and they were doing stuff on a CD-ROM publication at
Right.
the time,
Yeah.
which was fascinating because it was the precursor to what was going to happen in broadband probably 5 years later.
Right.
But, again, broadband was in less than 1% of the country at the time, yet we were producing a CD-ROM publication typically focused or mostly focused on music. But we started doing video ads with automobiles. Apple was an early advertiser. So it was a lot of fun to talk to marketers. It was fun, but it was also very challenging because the marketers were trying to figure out, and the ad agencies, this internet thing that wasn't really that old. And I said, well, we had a CD-ROM publication. And they go, what? We don't have a budget for CD-ROM. I go, well, I know you don't have a budget, but just take a look at it.
Right.
So, we had a lot of fun with that, and it was great talking to major marketers about that particular product.
Right. Right. Getting these advertisers, getting some sponsors to
Yeah.
help monetize the content. Yeah. So what happened after Weather? Where'd you end
Yeah,
up?
well, there's a couple in between, but Fandango was probably the biggest one. There was a company called Launch. I was at Excited Home for a little while,
Wow.
which
Excite. Wow. That's an early start
yeah,
search engine. Yeah. Remember those guys?
yeah, it was every bit as big and as popular as Yahoo at one point, and then it hit the iceberg. And so there's stories about that. And they were focused the at home side of that. You may remember is broadband. So they were
Yeah.
very focused on the future of broadband.
Yeah.
But then Fandango was probably the next significant thing, and I joined them very early. I think I was maybe employee 30. They were just doing ticketing revenue, but realized that this audience is pretty special, particularly to studios. So I built out a national team for them.
Okay. Really briefly. So Fandango was one of the early .com pure play .coms. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
were they venture backed? Was that a?
they were funded by theater chains and by venture as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Tell us about
Interesting.
your early struggles with Fandango. I'm very curious to this story.
Well, the early struggles were really about size, as is the struggle in any media entity. You're excited about your audience. It's just not that big. And someone says, man, I like who it is. I like the characteristics. Come back to me in 2 years when you're 5 million uniques or whatever it is.
Right.
So our size was an issue. And we were going up against Yahoo or MSN and their movie sections.
Right.
So the studios weren't spending a lot of time with us. But what we started to do was, about movies launches, it's all about the Friday that the movie launches, and the Friday is the most critical thing.
Right.
So we said, okay, we'll just give you a whole roadblock of like our entire site, well, certainly the homepage,
Okay.
on a Friday.
Yeah.
They go, all right, that makes sense, I'll take it. So
Okay.
they started to get decent buys there,
Oh.
and there's only 52 Fridays in a year. There's only probably 25 that they really care about in the heavy movie season, summer and the holidays.
Mhm.
So after a while, one of the struggles was that we started leveraging the rest of our time. They wanted Fridays so badly. We finally said, okay, you've got to buy us Monday through Sunday in order to get the
Ah, I
Friday.
love this. Okay,
Great.
so
Yeah, we were like,
I
they were
love
like,
it.
what? You can't do that, you know. But all right, my movie comes out Friday, June 5th. Can I have that week, please? You know,
That's
so
great. That's great.
we were
Hey,
all,
there's no secret. Movie marketing budgets are massive. Trying to get a piece of that is a good way of keeping the startup alive.
right, right. So we got traction with the studios pretty quickly. The challenge then became, which is the case with a lot of verticals, is getting money beyond that for the non-endemic. So,
Right.
I was there 6 years, and as successful as we were getting with the studios, they were only about half of our budget. So we're going after automobiles now. We're going after credit cards. There's another natural one because we were a commerce site.
Okay.
So I did a huge deal with Visa, actually right before I left the company, where we had figured out the technology to give a special offer to somebody using a Visa signature card. So it was basically buy one, get one free, or
Okay.
buy three and get the fourth free, or whatever it is. So, and I believe that deal is still going on now with them. So that was a great way to utilize the commerce.
Let me slow down here. So that sounds like a very unique thing that I don't think other sites or other vendors have approached, this credit card company with. What gave you the idea? Who came up with this creative?
Well, we had the ability to give people codes to get a free movie ticket. So we were trying to get deep into the promotional business, giving away free movie tickets inside of a DVD or cereal boxes with General Mills. I mean, that's been around forever.
Right.
But we were trying to provide the digital solution for that. So
Yeah. Okay.
I had a separate team that reported to me, and we were out calling on General Mills, calling. Well, what was great is that we'd come in with all kinds of ideas, not just a media idea,
Right.
but other. So when we approached Visa, we had figured out how our commerce system could tell what credit card it was. Not only that it was a Visa card, but that it was a Visa signature card.
I see. So we can just isolate just those customers using the site.
Exactly.
I see.
Exactly. And I have to believe others have followed that lead. I don't know that we were actually, the first ones to market in doing that, but we certainly had great success with it. Visa was all over it. We did it in those early days. We did it with Discover Card a little bit as well.
Okay.
But it was a pretty unique idea. And so it was fun working with those marketers on multiple levels. And Visa certainly appreciated their marketing and their brand awareness as well through Fandango, a rising star in terms of the commerce business. So
Wow.
that was
Yeah,
a
absolutely.
success story.
Wow, Jeff. This is a consumer internet promotional idea.
Yeah, it's really inventive of you guys to come up with.
Well, and one of the biggest challenges for all startups in pursuing the ad revenue model. And I talked, I've done a lot of hiring over the years of people from traditional media that want to come into digital. And the biggest shock to them is that you in all of media, you're basically selling the quality of an audience. But in the digital space, it ends there, and there's a whole nother 50% of the road, or another 50 yards you got to get, to use a football analogy.
Wait,
And
wait, you're gonna slow down on that. What do you mean exactly? 50% more? Why is that different in digital?
Well, because traditional media, radio, they like the audience. Yes, that's the audience they want to reach, and they send you over the 30-second radio ad. Okay. So what I mean is, the other part of it is the creative and how it's going to look on the site. So in the media buying space at an ad agency, it's very typical if they send you an RFP, you go, we want to do something that's never been done before. We love your audience. That's why we're sending you an RFP.
Gotcha.
If you have to come back with a proposal.
Right.
We're not just going to send over display ads. We
Right.
want to do something.
We want to do something creative. We want to do something unique to you guys. Gotcha.
Yeah. And that's a key message, again, to your audience, and key. I mean, people are living that every day. As you start, either you intended to use the ad model from the get-go, or you're now building this audience and go, wow, we should be attracting advertisers. It's not as easy as you think.
No. Trust me, I don't think it's easy.
Well, yeah, I don't think it is.
I know it's hard. It's just such a fragmented audience now. The digital is even more fragmented. I mean, yeah.
Well, yeah, and the cost, as we all know, the cost of entry to getting a site up, attracting an audience for whatever reason is not that hard to do. The cost anyway,
Right.
but to keep building it, to scale it, whatever is harder. And as you heard me say a minute ago, I mean, size is a huge factor.
So, can you think of any other big struggles you guys had at Fandango? What any stories from that?
The other, I would say, I think one of ultimately in the end, one of the strengths was that it was a dual revenue stream. So ticketing revenue had been there, but both started to grow together, and eventually by the time I left, the advertising revenue was about 50% of the total revenue, and ticketing, when I got there, ticketing was 90% of the revenue.
Okay.
So there are often internal struggles with a lot of startups about advertising. I mean, one of the things I read today, I think what's interesting is a lot of people who suddenly start to consider the ad model, or they're going to build an audience through social media, whatever it is,
Right.
they're actually outright opposed to it. The CEO of Path was quoted, I think in the
Right.
past year, it says, "We do have a manifesto opposing advertising.
Oh,
We're proud of that. Who likes advertising?"
well, it's easy to say that when you how much did they get today, Jeff? 50 million?
Yeah, I think that was the headline. 50
Yeah.
million C round, I think.
Yeah. But even if you believe that, I don't think you need to say that out loud. I mean, keep your options open for the future. And I think a lot of people that aren't familiar with the media business don't realize those fundamentals. And that if you attract an audience,
Okay.
and it has some unique characteristics before you get size, it has some unique characteristics that are coveted by marketers. Young males are one of the hardest things to reach by all media.
Okay.
So you've got great characteristics there. So people will give you some attention, God forbid, some money in advertising, even when you're small, and then you start to scale that, you're highly successful. But there's a lot of people, a lot of the startups I've been involved with, it was funny how people would say, "Oh, well, advertising, that'll ruin everything. Nobody will buy a movie ticket if we put an ad on
Right.
on Fandango."
Yeah.
Well, are they really going to see an ad and go,
Right,
"Oh, forget
right.
it, I don't want to go to the movies anymore. I'm so angry at that ad that was on my
Right,
site."
right, yeah.
Right.
So I just, one of those messages I have to entrepreneurs and startups is it's $100 billion business that's spending in advertising. Money continues to flow from traditional media into online and digital media of all kinds.
Mhm.
Smartphones are changing everything.
Okay.
As you think of a startup and you're going to aggregate an audience of some kind, you need to be thinking about the ad model.
Well, Jeff, I want you to respond to this one directly because I
Yeah,
know
no, I
you're
think it's
very
really-
advertising adverse.
Perhaps, yeah, as an engineer, product guy, the advertisements get in the way. They're, distract you from your focus. I'm really curious, though, at Fandango early on, what was their strategy? Did they have like a stake in the ground, or did they have a set strategy for just the transactional ticket sales? Was that their one and only focus, or did they have the idea of advertising later on?
Yeah, absolutely. It was ticketing. And as I understand it, there were some predecessors, both I think the CTO and the VP of marketing were adamantly opposed to having any advertising on there. Come on, we're a commerce site. Advertising will ruin that.
Mhm.
I think what's happened is from traditional media to digital media. It is, and back to the quote from Path. I think you should have a manifesto against bad advertising or
Okay.
bad marketing tools for publishers. I like to call them marketing tools more than media necessarily.
Right.
But there is so much money to be made if you've got, again, a coveted audience that's growing. Figure out a way that the messaging looks good on your site.
Right.
It is relevant and important, and there's all kinds of tools, as we know, to make it more relevant to your audience. And you'll make a whole lot of money that way,
Right.
and that's what's exciting about where we all sit right now. And my background is the ad model. Figure that out. You got a lot of money to make if you've got a great audience, even if there's a dual revenue stream, in my opinion.
Gotcha.
Interesting. So when Fandango had the ticket sales, how long did it take them to say, hey, maybe we should start advertising? We have this, highly targeted audience.
Yeah. Well, I believe they started in like 2001. I started in 2003. Maybe they were 2002. So within a year, I think fairly early they were considering, but they weren't. I think it took several site redesigns before they got a display at, a banner across the top or whatever. And
Okay.
because when I got there there was one salesperson I inherited and a trafficker, and we built it out. We built it out from there. So
Well, so Dan, that was a very interesting time for the internet. The whole .com, the whole boom, the bust. Fandango obviously was venture backed and had some money in the bank a little bit. What was your sense of the internet back then, and maybe LA in general? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it was a couple of the startups prior to Fandango that was really in the crap house, let's call it. Fandango, as I joined in '03, as you may remember, we were starting to come out of it. Now we went back into problems in '08.
Right.
But, so the whole ad community is severely affected by a downturn because people will start cutting their advertising,
Right.
and then you're all scrapping for smaller and smaller budgets.
Right.
What was great at Fandango and what ultimately got us purchased by Comcast was that as far as the studios went, even when times were tough, the summer movie going wasn't as strong or whatever, we continued to get dollars from them. We became very strong. We had a lot of fun starting to talk to them about mobile as well, which was the first year of mobile was back in one of those days.
Yeah.
So anyway, the marketplace was getting better in '03, and Fandango was in a pretty good position as a unique vertical. We had interesting battles, and I think they still battle with movietickets.com. There were other players in the marketplace, but it was a lot of fun to see that, to be a part of all that as it succeeded, to be a part of that leadership team.
Right.
Prior to Comcast.
So after Fandango, let's move on to the next thing. What'd you end up doing then?
Yeah, actually, I ended up working for Move, which you said you were familiar with.
Yeah.
They're based out in Westlake Village, and their key property is actually Realtor.com, which is the official site of the National Association of Realtors.
Right.
So I worked for them in building out their national sales team, and that was attractive to me because it was a very unique audience. Somebody who's about to purchase a house obviously has money to spend, but they're also going through transitions in life. A marriage can create a housing purchase. Having children creates that. Getting a big promotion, we're ready for a bigger house. So what they needed my team to do was go out and get money. Mortgage was our low-hanging fruit, but also from Home Depot and IKEA and insurance companies and stuff like that. So I was there for about 2.5 years helping build out that team.
So you mentioned sales team. This is obviously your big expertise. What are some of the key things as a startup? Let's say you're looking to now grow and you've got a product or a service. What are some of the key things, a co-founder, let's say he doesn't have a sales experience, he's an engineer. What's some of the things that person can be looking at? What are some tips and suggestions you have in that?
Right. And obviously we're talking to the type of product that necessitates a sales team to go to take the product to market, because there's a lot that marketing in and of itself could trigger the success of the particular product, but there's a lot when it's not as easy to understand the product or the buying community the buying process is complicated, or there's a very high level of competition. That's when you need a sales organization. Okay. And so I can go on for all different facets of that. You have to, on a national level, you need to determine what markets you want to be in. In one of your, I think it was with Skyscraper, we were talking about, I believe he had moved from Canada to San Francisco. I think you asked the question about why he didn't set up in New York. I mean, New York's absolutely critical beachhead for the media business.
For the consumer internet, for the national play, you're saying.
Correct, yeah. And then, so I talk about the beachheads you've got to set up. You need to set up in New York. You need to set up in Chicago.
Okay.
And then, you describe a scenario where the startup may be done by an engineer, a product guy.
Yeah.
I obviously recommend that you find somebody that's highly experienced in building.
Of course, but let's say they're a little bootstrapped. Let's say they're kind of small and they want to try to do it themselves. Any suggestions there?
Well, there are lots of ad networks. There's mobile ad networks. There's traditional online ad networks as well. If your site is just so small that it doesn't make sense to hire out your own sales team,
right,
then you can get involved with them. Again, I remember in some of the other interviews I heard with you guys, you talk about the realities of Google AdSense. And you want to get to, Google AdSense makes all the sense in the world. It's helping you monetize positions that you have and you don't have a team that's out there. Right. But at some point you want, if the uniqueness of your audience is strong enough, and your size is starting you're starting to scale, doing it on your own, starting to build out that team, starts bringing a whole lot more money to your bottom line. Not only that, you start to create your uniqueness in the marketplace, your reputation, why your audience is special. And that certainly happened, with Fandango, with Launch, became music division of Yahoo, and then also even back to the Weather Channel. Great gratification as you get in the marketplace and your entity by itself is getting great traction.
Right. So, what are some of the key metrics that you look at as when you're building a team and sales? Or
yeah, well, it's interesting you talk about metrics, because also the digital. I mean, Salesforce is a fantastic product. There's lots of other competitors to Salesforce. They're probably the biggest, and so cloud-based software that Salesforce is, tracking everything you're doing is so critical. And in sales, it's a fantastic tool. So, I mean, one of the key things, and it's a big challenge these days with the amount of communication tools that a decision maker has.
That's right. Yeah, there's so many. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of my key measures with my sales teams is face-to-face meetings.
Okay.
And in reality, you don't get as many as you do.
No, you don't. Not anymore. But what about nowadays with Skype and Hangouts? Is that considered face-to-face or good enough or close enough?
Yeah, no, not in my mind.
Okay.
Face-to-face in my mind is that you're, like, stage 1 is a cup of coffee before work. Stage 2 is you got them out to lunch. Stage 3, you got them out to dinner. Right. Stage 4, you bought a luxury box and got 5 great customers at a Dodgers game or whatever. Gotcha. So, that is a measure. You don't do them as frequently as you used to, but still, with even a frontline salesperson, there's a measure there of, did that person trust you? Are they believing in what you're telling them and the company? Are you making progress? Typically, they won't go out with you also till you're doing business. Right. But all those. So measuring a salesperson's ability to establish a relationship, establish trust, is absolutely critical to success.
Wow, this stuff is really hard, and the fact that you've done it and been in the trenches. What are some of the difficulties of getting to stage 2, stage 3? What have you found?
Oh, you mean the key thing, and actually I made some comments when I spoke over at Amplify in Venice in their Mentors series. There is a big difference between how you pitch your company to investors and how you pitch your company to an advertiser.
Or a potential joint venture partner or some...
True, right, yeah. Right. Particularly, though, in the media space, or I do believe you work closely with the ad agency, but you also try to establish a relationship with the client, okay? Because ultimately, they actually are paying the bills. Okay. The point of this and the story of this is I've worked for a lot of different startups, and the CEO is just so, they created, usually the CEO is the founder, particularly in those early stages. They are so excited about their company that when they go on a meeting with Procter & Gamble or Toyota or Home Depot or whatever, they want to talk so much about what's going on with the company. Right. And the media, but this is going to answer your question. In the media business, it is not about you; it is about them. And this is really the way it is in most sales as well. Okay. Most people in sales think selling is about presenting. Oh, let me come in and tell you what I have.
How awesome I am, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So to even get their attention of a high-level decision maker, the first thing you got to do is show them you care about their business. You can use connections. You may get through. Someone may introduce you. You may run into them at a conference. And this what separates some people who have been in sales, but they haven't really sold a tough product. As you can see from my background, sold some very difficult things that did not make sense with a great deal of success, and it's very gratifying. Anyway, so what you do over time before you even ask for a meeting is you start sending them information. Oh, I read in TechCrunch that you guys are doing this. That's fantastic. And you may not even say anything about your company at this point, but you just start feeding them. And then eventually you connect some dots. I see you guys are trying to do this. We have this idea over here that might be able to help you. Is there a chance I can get you on the phone? Or just get them to respond to an email?
All right, so let me stop you right here. So in sales, it's very, very important that you do the research, do your homework, and when you're talking and you're engaging with them, you really want to start bringing to light the stuff that you've learned about them, and really it's all about them.
Right. Even if, I've been in sales calls where someone who really, you sort of wonder why they even took the call. They really don't, they got something else going on. They go, all right, well, tell me about your company. Right. you don't answer that.
I love it.
Say, you know what? I'll be glad to tell you that in a minute. But I read the other day about your
Right.
company, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
heard you guys are trying to do that. Get them talking, because I
Right,
remember.
right. Get them talking. Talk to them about them. Ask them if they asked about you. Try to hold back and again go
Right,
in to them.
right.
Oh, that's brilliant, Dan. That's
Particularly
brilliant.
before the internet has changed everything in sales too for a most wonderful way. You can know so much about them going in,
Right.
but you do need to still bring it up in a way to sort of confirm this. I was reading on your annual report that you guys are emphasizing blah blah blah. How is that going?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
get them to talk. They love to talk about their companies too.
Right,
And
right,
suddenly they're just talking. Don't interrupt them. Just let them go.
right.
And even if it's an initial meeting, you just want to learn about their company anyway and confirm what the press won't really tell you, or what their press release won't tell you.
Gotcha,
So
gotcha.
that's a key approach. And then now you've indicated to them that you're not going to waste their time, right? Because that's the key. I even used to put that in emails and trying to get a meeting. I say, I would love to come by for 15 minutes or something. I promise I won't waste your time. I mean, you
Right.
just sort of say that, because that's what they're going, oh, I don't want that guy in my office. He'll probably waste my time or whatever.
You know, I
Proven.
want to talk to you, Dan, about just when you're reaching out to a specific person at a company, or you're trying to go for a certain vertical and you're trying to build a relationship with some of the top companies in that vertical. What happens when these guys blow you off time and time again? What are some of the best ways where you can get that meeting with that the C level, executive, and you're trying to get in there? What have you
Yeah.
used? Any tactics?
Well, the first tactic is you can't give up. I mean, let me put it a different way. As you start to find the key strengths of your product. When I started a new company, I learned a lot about their product and what it is. Okay, and then I say, okay, now we need to write out a list of the ideal prospects. What kind of company is going to need this product more than anybody else?
Right.
And some people have a tendency, well, I think everyone can use it. It'll be okay. That may be true,
Right.
but we got to prioritize here. Okay, we don't have a 30-person sales force. It's just you and me.
Yeah.
So let's prioritize. So you prioritize. You define that, and then you go after those prospects specifically, and you focus your efforts on what you're doing there in terms of prioritizing.
Got you. So back to the question again. If you're getting blown off several times, is there any way you can leverage maybe a meeting that you finally got with one of their leading companies, their competitors, as a tool to get the meeting with another?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's another concept I have called prioritization and avenues of least resistance.
Okay.
So when they blow you off, you got to sit back and say, all right. So at Move, if it's Bank of America blowing us off, we're not going to quit with Bank of America. We may if they've been pretty stern about it. If they tell us we're not doing anything in mortgage right now, go away.
Right.
Then we just have to sort of accept that. We might check back in 3 months or something like that. But
Right,
you never
right.
give up. So, but there may be some. You counsel with a younger salesperson who's decided to go after X company, and they really aren't that good for us.
Right.
You go, all right, good luck with that. Let me know how it goes. They come back, oh, they told us to go to hell. And you just say, all right, well, let's just not call them in anymore. That's not a priority. But when someone really important blows you take a couple of steps back, and if you get their competitor on in the most delicate way you can, you go, by the way, Home Depot, Lowe's is now advertising with us.
Right.
Here's what they did on our company.
Yeah.
It's not exclusive. We'd love to talk to you about some key programs for next summer or whatever.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you absolutely pound your chest when you've got the
No. I'm. This is the kind of stuff that I really want to hear about. Is how do you kind of strong arm your way in sometimes? Because depending on the competition, you may have to do that.
Yeah. Well, and marketplaces can be different. As you guys all can imagine, New York respects very assertive, and I would call it professionally assertive salespeople. And so that doesn't mean you're hounding them needlessly, but you follow up. You ask them when I can follow up, and then you follow up exactly when they told you to follow up.
Right.
So you're much more aggressive in New York than you would be in almost any other marketplace. And the other marketplaces, you may get a sales buddy to introduce you. If you're not competing with each other, whatever,
Right.
you may get a colleague at their company through some connection. I mean, it's all about connection. So can you find somebody at your company that they're their brother-in-law happens to work there or something like that. So
Yeah.
so obviously the connections.
I'm glad you brought that up. And Jeff, you can add to this. LinkedIn obviously is one of the bigger players in this sort of like who's connected to who and all that. Do you have any specific tactics with LinkedIn? Like a startup founder, let's say he's a small team and he wants to try to get in and build a
Yeah.
joint venture with another startup, let's say, or a big company in a specific vertical. How would
Yeah.
that person use LinkedIn?
Yeah. Yeah. Just as we all think about using LinkedIn quite a bit in our job search or for our careers and keeping that updated. But in your homework, before you go see Bob Jones at Kellogg's, you look him up on LinkedIn. He may have gone to the same college you did, and it's all right there. So you need to, or he may have worked at a company that you worked in a year beforehand, and he joined it a year later, and you never even realized he worked at one of your same companies. Mm-hmm. So all those are key things, and you want to be a little careful about stalking or whatever, but say, and maybe you just use that once you get in on the meeting. So I understand you went to Miami University, so did I, and you have those great connections. So LinkedIn it absolutely should be checked before you even try to contact somebody.
Okay. Have you found LinkedIn worked out really great for you and back, with Move or with Fandango?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Again, just for the reasons that I said, it's also for tracking companies as well. Again, back to that scenario, Sally is the chief marketing officer. She's not responding to you, but you go onto LinkedIn and you see who she's connected to, and you realize that she's good friends with so and so. So you might get a connection and an intro in that regard as well.
Gotcha. Dan, what I really, because you've been around the block and you've been doing this for a while, what do you think of this new wave of startups? This seems like a kind of a new thing now with the iPad, and it seems like a whole new wave. I don't know if you're feeling it, but I definitely feel like there's a new wave going on. What's your sense of it?
Well, and that is what's so exciting about it. I mean, the traditional media, there's not a lot of innovation going on there. And so everything you just described with social media, with mobile, with video, the way it's changing, with data and how it's using, and it's not for the faint of heart. There's a lot of people who can't handle it. They need more definition in their job and where it's going. They need more definition in their company, and that's fine. Then they need to go find that kind of job. But this is why I've loved startups and working for them. And I'm a very even-keeled person, so I've loved coming into a bit of chaos and say, okay, let's attack it this way, and we'll be successful. So I think it's absolutely the greatest time to be involved, particularly in the media business. Now, you guys talk to all kinds of entrepreneurs, all kinds of things going on. So the smartphone in somebody's hand, walking around constantly with them, is a dramatic, and we really are only at the beginnings of figuring out how that's going to be a good marketing.
Absolutely, we are totally in the beginnings. Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
As back to the Path CEO, you don't want you don't want bad advertising. You want innovative marketing that's taking best advantage of that particular device. Mm-hmm. To have two people communicate that would like to connect a buyer who really wants your product with you and how it works and how it would help them. And that's nothing but exciting. I think it's great.
Jeff,
interesting.
What would you? How would you characterize this new wave of entrepreneurs? Whenever I go to meetups and stuff, it's just like a wave of 20-year-olds or 20-somethings, and I feel like an old fart in that crowd. What's your thoughts, man? I mean, when you're hearing about all this back in the day with the early 2000s and just the weatherchannel.com back in 1995.
Yeah, I don't know if I can do a great job of characterizing it like in a phrase or sentence, but it really interests me, the evolution of all of these platforms and content creation. Twitter, Facebook, and Tumblr, for example. I'd be curious to get your take on the advertising on there. Tumblr, I think, specifically was like kind of anti-advertising, and they had a very elegant way of slipping it in, right? That it looked natural, and it was sort of like, I think the community embraced it. But Amul, did you say they recently kind of flipped the switch? And
when Yahoo bought them, bought out, $1 billion buyout, you start to be okay with advertising again.
Yeah, so I think the story is not told yet. I think we're still kind of pushing these guys up against a wall and saying, how is Twitter going to make money?
Right. Well, or it became most evident in the Facebook IPO, and suddenly, there's much more criticism about the ad model and will it work for social media. It absolutely will work. Again, it's that fundamental that you've got massive audiences congregating in one place. We just got to figure out the right way to talk to them on behalf of a marketer. And nobody needs to give up. And Zuckerberg, particularly through mobile and Facebook, is fully embracing that and knows that he has to do that.
Well, so Dan, I really wanted to actually go back to something we talked about earlier. So as we, you've have obviously some history in the cable TV biz with Weather Channel and the whole, before there wasn't that much choice, and then cable came on the scene in the 80s. And there was all this choice again, which was great. And then, of course, the internet came on in the 90s, and now YouTube has really become sort of the de facto television standard. Jason Calacanis, who's a popular LA tech figure, has come out on YouTube as sort of not being very, very sort of, they don't really make it a living situation for a lot of their content creators that could literally fill stadiums or fill, basketball, stadiums or whatever, but they can't make it a living. They're basically still at Starbucks, and they can't, the YouTube payout is very little. He was suggesting that some of these top YouTube stars get their own private direct sales force, move off of YouTube, and literally survive that way. What's your thoughts on that? Is that even a doable model? Do you see a role in sort of like these guys banding together, like what United Artists did back in the movie industry? What's your feedback on that?
Yeah, it's interesting because one of my personal passions and even some consulting I've done is in the lacrosse world. My kids play, I coach. I'm actually president of the LA chapter of U.S. Lacrosse. Okay. And so I was doing some consulting with a company called the Lacrosse Network, which was started by a young man that went to school here at Harvard Westlake in LA. Okay. And I was talking to him about it and his monetization right now. It is a small audience. Lacrosse is actually the fastest growing sport at the high school level, yet it's still very small audience. And it's small in Southern California despite being on fire. It's actually the fastest growing sport, youth sport in Southern California too. Okay. And he is dependent on very small revenue coming in from YouTube as they monetize it. So I talked to him a lot about, because machinima is a whole. When you get enough scale, as you guys know, it starts to change the business model with them, and so it's easy for me to say, but I do believe as if the audience is unique enough and starts to get scale, that you should build your own sales team, and this happened with several of the startups that I've been with. It is hard though, and the audience. I was listening to your question and wasn't quite sure where it was going, but the very large audiences. The Super Bowl will remain. There's lots of larger audiences, but we are definitely in a time frame of fragmentation, and we're gonna have to learn how to work with that correctly. I also think I was at Digital Hollywood in the Marina a couple of months ago, and there's a lot of people talking about content or whatever. And the cost of entry in producing your own video is very low these days. But in the end, it is going to be highly creative, high production value video that will make the most money. Now, the audience has to come with that. So I think what's happening is it gives very creative people who can't get in the door 15, 20 years ago because of the system can now get in the door easily. And so hopefully it gives better chances. But in the end, it's gonna be great video, no matter what the multi-platforms you're using, that actually becomes most successful. And that may be stating the obvious, but I think there's a lot of people.
Well, so you mentioned this, this person with the lacrosse, and he wants to create this network. Honestly, Dan, does he have any hope of maybe getting on the phone? Could you possibly work with a guy like that and say, all right, here's a prospect list. Even though you don't have those big numbers right now, you can possibly convince a sponsor to be like, hey, I know we're growing, but maybe we'll give you a better deal. What would you? Is there any way that he could get a sponsor on, even with low views?
Well, again, what he's doing now, which is really unfortunately what he has to do, is he's in a sports channel on YouTube, and so all his ad positions are actually filled by YouTube. I believe he has the ability. to bring another advertiser, but I think he has to run through YouTube, Google's sales team, and they still get a piece of that action. But so actually, I talked about that, and that was what I was consulting with him about was how he might do that on his own. But he would have to, the expense, as you guys know, would be that he'd have to start streaming his own all his own video on his own, and that's extremely expensive. So
Right.
it's a tough dilemma.
Yeah, Jeff, what do you
Very
think
tough.
here? Moving to your own stream, getting your own sales team?
Yeah, what do you suggest that people go off YouTube? I mean, we've been using it because it's so frictionless and easy, and we think it's easier to share. It's embedded, and it's most deployed. But we certainly aren't really getting a lot of audience through their front door.
Yeah. Well, again, it's one of the things that I think it's about scale. I mean, I love watching Machinima. Like the former CFO from Fandango is actually the CFO. The guy named Dan Murray is the CFO at Machinima. So I talk to him every once in a while. And there are, as you know, them and Vivo, I believe, are two of the most successful on the YouTube platform. And so I'm not going to pretend to be an expert about how to do that. I just have perspective about at some point, you want to control all the media and marketing opportunities that you could provide to the marketer yourself if you can. But YouTube is extremely valuable when you're a small startup in getting the audience that you want. Are you so? I was going to ask you guys a little bit about your ad platform or your. I know you asked for sponsorships. How is that going? Are you using YouTube as well for your archive? Is that how it works? Or?
Jeff, you want to go start with?
Yeah, for the time being, we've been using YouTube to host all of our videos. We've chosen a video format, although we do strip the MP3 and publish it as an audio podcast on iTunes and Stitcher. And then we're also pushing out to social channels, just like our links to our homepage, which have all the raw content. But we've been using YouTube because it's easy and distributed, and then we've also been taking advantage of the Hangouts on air that we're recording this on because of the ease of use and the free alternative to Skype, and it works pretty well. And it also does a backup recording, and I think we were talking about that a little bit at the beginning of the conversation. How for me as a technologist, it's just amazing that we don't have to we do still do a little bit of production work, but with these tools, you actually don't need to. You can just hit upload, or just by recording it, it uploads it to YouTube. So it really lowers the bar as far as the tools and effort it takes to get on there. So we've been trying to use that to our advantage to some degree, but we have been not monetizing on YouTube because we want as many views as possible. I guess we could be doing some of the overlays and things that aren't as intrusive, but we haven't found it to be enough of a impact for us. So I guess I've monetized some of our older videos that we maybe don't want people to see as much, that are deeper in the archive. Sort of our early days while we were getting practiced.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it is a great platform, and that's what they're doing, and they're providing outstanding tools as you get started. And I think the lesson is to keep watching video entities that are just out in front of you, in front of any startup that's bigger. And again, Machinima or Vivo being one of those. And they continue to use that platform at a highly successful level, and I don't have any indications that they're going to change.
So Dan, I kind of want to answer this question really quickly here. Jeff pointed out that we have monetized several of our really old videos when we were just the two of us critiquing startups. But this issue of monetization is a big issue with me and with him, because we obviously want to keep doing this and hopefully sustain it. But we don't have the numbers. And we don't have the audience built to be able to approach some possible sponsors. Now, in your opinion, how would a person in that sort of position, in a weak spot, turn that around, flip it, and almost spin it so that it's not a, hey, we don't have much of an audience. It's, hey, we've been doing this. This is the kind of caliber of folks we've been getting. Here's what our early feedback has been. This is where we're going to be in 6 months, and paint that picture to try to get somebody on board. What's your thoughts on that?
Do you have the ability to have call outs to sponsors? I mean,
Absolutely. Jeff and I can put on a hat. We can dance. We can sing and dance. I don't know, Jeff. You could probably do some
Yeah,
other
I'm about
skits.
to move into a new studio here. I'm actually moving across the street, but I'm thinking about putting a nice ad space back there. I've got my hat can have an
Right, yeah,
ad on it, and
you
even my
need a
coffee mug.
you need a
Uh,
Coca-Cola bottle in the background, only if they pay you for that.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Product
Well, so
placement.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I mean, is it a good idea for us to say like your ad here, like let people know that they could be sponsoring in these places?
As old school as this is, you could look at some of the radio. I mean, because you are television, and you could look at. I mean, go pay attention to how I don't watch morning television shows, but they call out to sponsors all the time. I mean, it's old school,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
you are a wonderful sort of grassroots video product, and I love it. And so you might use some of those fundamental things as long as it's not infringing on anything Google doesn't want you to do as you rebroadcast.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, that's a good point. So yeah, staying in their terms of service, and two, keeping it really grassroots and keeping it really authentic. And so I think a lot of people, a lot of podcasts rather in our space have used sponsorships as a way to make it sustainable. Um, I think that's probably the route we may need to go. And Jeff and I have talked about this quite a bit. It's just kind of hard figuring out how to spin it so that a sponsor is interested in taking a bet on a small operation that hasn't grown yet.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And
and we're really a grassroots effort, like probably a lot of people on, creating content on YouTube and elsewhere. We didn't really know, like, we weren't trying to make this a business. We weren't, our first day, we weren't set out to like get sponsors. We're like, oh, let's create some content, let's like do this thing and whatever. And it sort of grew and evolved, and we got to where we are. And to the point now where we're like, wow, we've actually got great guests, and I think that it's going to continue to grow. And we're trying to show that growth and show it off, which is what Amul's saying. I think like with our YouTube, those aren't our only numbers either. We have iTunes numbers, and it's a little bit difficult to aggregate and present the picture we want to show.
Right, right. Is there? Well, I suppose Google's can aggregate. Are you in a channel with Google? I mean, with YouTube?
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So no, one of the big things that I've been thinking about doing, Dan, is how do we approach larger media figures in this vertical so that we can piggyback on some of their success and get known to a larger audience that way? How do we interview founders that have larger followings and maybe piggyback on that?
Yeah.
How do we cover breaking events that get searched quite a bit and then we get found? And that kind of thing. So, I have some ideas. I just, you've been at these larger companies with big budgets and hopefully, decent sized audiences already. So we're kind of, we're definitely not in your sweet spot. I just wanted to get your opinion on like, how does a little guy?
I'm a big believer in benchmarking your competition, if not companies that you respect. I mean, so I'm thinking. And some of these are huge, but then you can work back down the ladder. There, the Huffington Post started pretty small in their day and was trying to do, true great journalism, and I think they've done a great job at that. There's another company off the top of my head called Newsy. I think it's Newsy or SEY. That's out of. My wife was telling me about this. It's out of a university. Back east, and their journalism school is running a website, trying to do good journalism out of that as well. So you could benchmark them. Are they getting any money from advertisers? I don't know.
Gotcha.
There's another. Are you familiar with? There's a show called Silicon Beach or something like that here in LA. Do you know those guys?
Yep, sure
Yep.
have. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I ran into them at a conference and haven't really checked them out. But so I keep benchmarking. Have a cup of coffee with them. You can commiserate over challenges and stuff like that.
Right.
Other than that, I in the different interviews that I saw, I love the stuff. As I told you, I'm an auditory learner, so I love and I'm studying companies all the time. And so I love having these basic interviews you have with people starting different companies. I think it's great.
Well, I appreciate the positive feedback. If there's something that you'd suggest, like in terms of what we could change, what would that be?
Well, I gave you one of them. I'm a revenue builder. And I've been in environments and startups where it was my job to push the edge of the envelope on what we would do on behalf of an advertiser. And this is what Jeff and a lot of people whose baby it is to build an audience or whatever are nervous about. But my job has always been to look at, well, how can we take care of a small advertiser when you're young? I mean, the Weather Channel is back to those days. I hate to go way back there, but we were just scrapping for every dollar we could get, and it was hard. We were competing against CNN, and so some people there in the programming department were going like, "That's a," people would say to me, "Well, we want the right kind of advertiser." And I would say, "What, the ones who pay their bills?"
Right. Yeah, the money is green. Take it.
Right, and that doesn't mean you want to start selling cigarettes and condoms and Jack Daniels.
Right.
There's a little definition. That's why they've been there. But you there is the right advertiser to a degree, and a little bit of a tangent is some of the challenges like Machinima has. Machinima has some very cutting edge content, and you have to be careful because there's a lot. Procter and Gamble will not show up with really bad content. Neither will Ford or some other advertisers. So you just got to keep plugging away at it.
Gotcha. Well, I have a lot of faith in what we're doing, Jeff. Hopefully, you do too.
Oh, I like your product.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I like your product.
Oh, well, that means more to us than anything. I mean, like I said, we kind of set out like, hey, we want to create content. It's just difficult to do sometimes on your own and stressful and whatnot. So we came together for this effort.
All right. So for the type of content you're doing for startup interviews, and I should know this. I should have figured this out before I came on. But who is at the top? Who has the largest? Is there a show on CNN on the weekends that's about startups that I'm not aware of, or whatever? Is there someone at the top that you could point to?
There's a couple podcasters at least that I followed for most of my career. Some guys that actually came. Okay, so what was it? Tech TV got turned ousted and turned into G4. And so, anyways, the guys at the Screensavers were great, and they left. And Leo Laporte was the head there, who became This Week in Tech. And so he's got a whole podcasting network up in Petaluma, up near Silicon Valley. He's great. He's really a powerhouse and a startup entrepreneur, creating that himself. But he's been in the broadcast industry for his whole life, so he kind of brought his whole audience there. So that's a huge network. And then down in LA, of course, there's Calacanis's This Week In, where he just abbreviated it to, wow, that's a great idea. I'm going to do anything on This Week In.
Right. Yeah.
And so he's got This Week in Startups and a few others that he tried. Or I think they tried a whole bunch.
They tried a whole bunch,
cut
and they
them
did
down.
fail. Some of them did fail because, Jeff, what would you say? Not enough audience, not enough sponsors? What was the problem, Jeff? What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, when they set out, it looked like they tried a whole bunch of different verticals. They did casting calls for hosts and got people in different niche interests. And I don't know why. I guess some of them just didn't catch a following, or probably just when you put them all next to each other, they probably just took the top 3 or 5.
Yeah, I think they took the top 3, and the top 3 happened to be in tech. He did web design. He left. I think This Week in Tech is still around, and maybe there's
And
one
This
more.
Week in VC.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, so they're doing pretty good. They're, we definitely keep an eye on them, but they're also very experimental and very early days. Like Amul said, Calacanis wrote that article about YouTube and felt kind of burned by it. So I think everyone's still trying to figure out what's going on with the video play.
Everybody's trying to figure out how to survive here, and we don't want to get a job, Dan. We don't want to work for anybody.
So I think we could have some ideal sponsors, though. You look at those shows, like the big thing for entrepreneurs is like law advice, accounting, some of those startup services, as well as the more obvious things like hosting, some of the technical services, So, I really think that our first sponsor should be a web host, and I wonder how we should sort of offer that to all of these hosts, and how we start that conversation, get a little bit of the competitive nature, and say, hey, look, we're an ideal show for a web host sponsor, because every startup's going to start with a website. How should we approach all of those guys? Is there a strategy to reach them all at one time, or together?
You find out where they are and send them an email, call them, show up in their office.
Okay.
If you think it's and I agree with you, those are great prospects for you. Just contact them.
Okay.
So Dan, what's your story now? You're just consulting. You ever thought about getting in the trenches again, doing your own startup? Was that even something remotely? You found a couple of guys that are ready to take on the world. Would you join them, or what?
Yeah, no, I have thought about startups, and actually was related to lacrosse and monetizing that audience. I go to a lot of lacrosse tournaments
Okay.
and see this audience of enthusiastic
Oh,
parents
that's
and
great. So
kids.
you're really
Yeah.
passionate about this vertical.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, and I consulted to one of the largest lacrosse companies in California
Okay.
for a little bit, talking to them about it as well. But as I can, it's fun to talk to you guys about different startups, but also to talk to people directly, which is why I spend a lot of time in Venice or downtown or whatever. But I would definitely jump on with another company that needs to get their sales strategy figured out, build it out across the country. Would love to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. How are you thought about doing more, getting on the lecture circuit, hitting all the incubators and accelerators, and really driving sort of your position, your in that way?
Yeah, I really appreciate you guys inviting me to be on your show, and the reception, over at Amplify in the comments I made there. I had a lot of fun with that too. We talked a lot, and the question, you know how you're doing really at the end as they start to ask questions, and everybody was very engaged, wanted to talk to me afterwards, and I know a lot about how to go about sales in the right way and building that out. So it was a lot of fun, and would yeah, absolutely would do
You
some
do
more.
that, so you might see yourself hitting Coloft or what's the other one, Cross Campus, or those guys here in LA, or
Yeah. I've actually talked to Will Sue over at I forget, I'm blanking on the incubator over there as well, and talked to him for a little bit and worked with one of his companies.
what? And since we're talking about LA, what do you think of this whole LA scene? I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, and I used the term Silicon Beach. Those of us who live, and I live in Playa del Rey, right near Venice.
Okay.
Um, I'm not sure. And there's Silicon Alley in New York City, and probably everybody who lives in New York hates the fact. It's probably all outsiders who give it that name.
Right, right. Yeah,
Uh,
they probably don't like it in New York. Yeah, you're probably right about
yeah.
that.
Well, as you heard, I've been in LA a long time, but I'm not an LA native. And Hollywood is here, and entertainment is here, and so I mean, nothing's going to replace Silicon Valley and the great technology, the great tech tradition that they have up there. But there needs to be, as Steve Jobs went on and founded Pixar and got involved with that. There's that cross section of great technology and how it brings entertainment to consumers. So
Yeah.
LA is always going to play a part of that, and I think it is very promising over the past 3 years, let's say, and how the tech startups that are related to entertainment are trying to get that figured out in LA. So I think that's very positive.
Is there some new startup here in LA, or any new thing that you've seen that you're excited about, want to talk about?
I've mentioned a few of them, and we've talked more about video than anything else. And so, as you know, Google and Playa Vista, right near me.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Oh, actually, let's talk about that. There was a thing in the paper recently, and I know they had an open sort of kind of an open house or whatever you want to call it. They have a huge studio, big, huge hangar
yeah,
out in
yeah,
Playa del Rey, kind of right in your neck of the woods, right?
yeah, yeah.
And this
I'm
is
up.
just for YouTube creators. Tell us about that.
Well, I have not been there, but as I understand it, they've got a blue screen down there where you can. I don't think you even rent it. You may just sign up for it, and you could come in and shoot some video. So YouTube is obviously doing everything they can to facilitate entrepreneurs and creatives to do video.
What's in it for YouTube? So I know from what I read, certain advertisers didn't like putting their content next to possibly content that wasn't on the same level every time. The quality, they have an issue with the quality control. And so is this YouTube trying to, trying to sort of create, what's the right word? Trying to normalize creative control or
Yeah.
quality control over a bunch of producers?
Yeah, that's interesting. That second aspect you put of it, because the first is, I think, as large as Google and YouTube are, they want to keep it going, because as you know, they when you're small, you're in a channel, they're providing the advertising, so they're just making their audience that much bigger, and they're monetizing it. The second about they may be getting feedback from Lexus, who says, "No, I ain't putting my ads next to that production quality,
Right.
and that's fine because there's some advertisers. It is. I believe that it is what it is. I mean, the production values we have here through our laptops or whatever. That's, I think, part of the uniqueness of this type of show. So Google maybe, or YouTube may be trying to standardize that. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds. I mean, based on some of these images I'm seeing, Jeff, that you've pulled up, this is a beautiful place, Jeff. Maybe we should just get out of our home offices here and head over to these hangars.
Yeah, it looks pretty interesting. Could be a neat place for people to work together and collaborate even on their creative endeavors.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, cool. I think we've been chatting here for a little while. If people want to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
Yeah, my email is danmohler@yahoo.com.
Awesome.
Or one with
Awesome.
DANMOHLER@yahoo.com.
Great. Great. Jeff, any final words?
No, this has been an awesome conversation. We really appreciate your time and your insights, and you're helping startups. We really appreciate you getting in early and being there at Amplify and talking to them and
Yeah,
getting
no,
the wheels going. I think also we didn't talk about it too much, but the what you guys do with Fandango and the idea of multiple revenue streams, and I think that's the toughest part of startups a lot is like, what is the business model? How are we going to make money? And to realize that there are more opportunities than you might think is a good mindset to have.
yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me on. I enjoyed it, and I'm going to keep watching your interviews. I think they're great.
Awesome.
Oh, thank
Really
you.
appreciate that.
Take care.
Thanks again, Dan.
All right, see you then.